Welcome into Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal. I'm Chris Vanell. That's Chris Boyle. That's Zach Allen. Boys, we've made it to week 3. How's that possible already?
Yeah, we're already 30% of the way done.
I'm just glad we haven't had any hurricanes yet. That's a huge improvement on most years. I'm tempting fate by saying it, but you know what?
I was gonna say find some wood
Bring it
to
on.
knock on.
Well, now don't threaten
We
the
got to
weather, Boyle,
indoctrinate
because
Zach to
I'm
being
gonna
a
be out
Floridian
at
somehow.
I'm gonna be at a rain delay then. Chris and I are gonna be at rain delays just because of you, Chris Boyle.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about we've got a fun slate this week because there's 4 all local games. So we've got Flagler, Palm Coast taking on Mainland. We've got Matanzas taking on Daytona, Atlantic battling Father Lopez, and Seabreeze fighting Halifax. So those 4, it's a fun week, boys. Let's dive in with Flagler Palm Coast at Mainland. That's a 7:00 game on Friday. We've got nothing but Friday games this week. What are you guys looking? I'll start with Zach. What are you guys looking at with Flagler v Mainland?
I still don't know who Flagler Palm Coast is. I mean, they had a good win week 1 over Matanzas, but then they go out and lose against Lake Howell, 28-19. It looks like from the box score of last game, they settled on Caden Birchfield at QB, although, I mean, for all we know, Ladarius Simmons could have gotten hurt in practice or something, and he was out for the game. But either way, it's kind of an unexpected result to me. I think,
I think all 3 of us picked Flagler to win that game.
Yes, we did. And then they allowed 28 points, including 200 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, which was kind of a completely different performance than from what I saw at Matanzas, where Matanzas struggled to throw the ball. And then the next week after they play Flagler Palm Coast, Matanzas throws for 300 yards. So I think I'm looking for maybe a little more consistency defensively from Flagler Palm Coast. I also think this is it could be a good matchup because Mainland on the other side has been inconsistent at times on offense. So I'm excited to see that, and I'm again excited to see who they roll out at quarterback because they've kind of been tinkering with that all season.
Whoever they play at quarterback, Nolan Caliendo was the big target last week. Racked up 170 yards, 3 touchdowns for the Bulldogs. So a huge performance there. Mainland, like you said, they scored 19 points in that first half against Cocoa and then go scoreless the rest of the way. All 3 of those touchdowns were passes from Sebastian Johnson. Chris, what are you looking for in this one?
Swagger's back at Mainland. They feel real good about themselves right now. I mean, they went down there, beat Cocoa, 3-time defending state champions, a team that beat them by 51 points last year.
Yeah.
And they did it in kind of a whole bunch of different ways. I mean, Sebastian Johnson, like you mentioned, had 3 touchdown passes. He had 3 different receivers. He hit Christian Cooper, Chris Butler, Caden Flores, Braylon Simmons had 127 rushing yards with a touchdown. They picked off Champ Smith twice defensively. So, I mean, just an all-around complete performance for Mainland. They were able to hold on and win that game, which that's a tough place to go win. So they're going to feel real good about where they stand and what things look like going forward. I don't know if that necessarily puts them back in the title picture again. I know that's where they envisioned being. They were state champions a couple seasons ago, but to get off to a start like this, it just builds a huge amount of confidence going forward as they hit kind of a part of the schedule where they will face some of these top local teams.
Yeah, and they had a week 1 bye, but you start your season in week 2 with this victory, and if you go back to the unofficial result, the preseason kickoff classic, they beat Osceola, who's another top team.
Runner-up last year.
Yeah, so these aren't scrubs they're beating.
No.
Yeah, so that'll definitely be an interesting.
They can definitely
matchup.
puff their chests out when they take the field here for a few weeks. I mean, they've got some. They've hung in there and they've beaten some very upper quality opponents. Like I said, I know state title is always the talk and always the goal for Mainland. But to see what kind of strides they've made year on year this year, Squatty Bell's second season, it's very impressive, especially on offense.
Well, let's talk about, I mean, here's their upcoming schedule. This is a pretty fun next like 5-6 weeks. Flagler Palm Coast this week. Then they host Spruce Creek.
Yeah.
They travel to Coffee, which is always a pretty good team in Georgia. They host Matanzas. That's a district game. And then they head to DeLand. That's a pretty fun way to get yourself into October there. At least
there's
for
not
us.
A lot of let up there.
No. So,
I talked about Simmons too. He's got a big subplot to play in this game too. He played at FBC last year. Was an all area player there. So obviously some familiarity, that he'll face some former teammates, but he's going to be certainly a big piece of what Mainland does on offense.
Yeah, kind of a different look for him too. Now that he's primarily playing running back, Mainland has a bunch of receivers they like. So Braylon Simmons at running back. After last year, he played mostly wide receiver for the Bulldogs. So Matanzas at Daytona. Matanzas scores their first win of the year last week, looking really good against University. They travel to Daytona, and that is 2-0 Daytona. Mr. Boyle, what are you looking for here? We'll start with you.
Yeah, let's focus in on Daytona and this defense. I think that's the thing that stood out to me. They had 6 tackles for loss last week, 2 apiece for Trevor Davis, Tyrese Grigsby, and Desmond Hoover. I mentioned the challenge going into the Vieira game was to slow down Eric Nelson. They held him to 125 yards of total offense. I mean, I said year on year, I think continuity is key as it pertains to building a successful program with the coaches, especially. And Matt Martin in year 3's got Daytona believing they can do something special. They've beaten a team in Vieira that had a very nice week 1 win over Rockledge. They beat Crescent City, who tripped them up last year. They've got to be feeling confident too.
Well, and they kind of did it 2 different ways, right? You put up 40 in week 1, and then week 2 you come back and win a 14-6 defensive battle. So I'm sure that Matt likes his kind of the moxie that those guys have, being able to win both of those styles of games. Zach, what are you looking for here, Matanzas and Daytona?
Yeah, I mean, without spoiling anything, potentially ranked Daytona when our rankings release tomorrow or Thursday, whenever that is. But like you said, Chris, they've done it in 2 different ways. And even if their week 1 game was a defensive battle, I think they still would have pulled it out because they've only allowed a combined 19 points through 2 games. And on offense, it's just the Jeremiah Hancock show. He's been responsible for 5 of their touchdowns. I think they've scored like 6 this season, so he's scored almost every one. And then they have a kicker too. Gio Pedrino, he's drilled 3 of them already. He had 2 last week, which was a big reason why they had 8 points of space in the first place. And so this is a team that I'm excited to see what they can do. I mean, we know the big schools, Mainland, DeLand, Spruce Creek are going to be good, but I like seeing maybe someone that we didn't necessarily expect to be a good team end up being a good team and giving some of the better teams a run for their money.
And Matanzas is a good test because, Matanzas, they kind of play Flagler pretty close in week 1. What was the final score there? 26-14 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then they come out and they look really good against University. So they fell behind in that game early. They score the first touchdown and then give up 14 unanswered. The final in the second half, they outscored University 23-7. I mean, it was pretty dominant. They threw for a school record 314 yards. That's Cole Walker doing that with 3 touchdowns. Wiley Connor rushed for more than 100 yards. They had 2 receivers go over 100 yards with Jordan Schendorf and Andrew Bass. So the offense was humming, and then defensively, like I said, limiting University to only 7 points in that second half. While Christian Mayhew, I wrote afterward that in terms of play style, he's got a little Johnny Manziel in him because he's just during this game, he was just running around in circles and making it super tough for the pass rush to get to him, taking risks downfield. And the thing that kind of tarnishes his stat line last week was 2 interceptions. But other than that, I thought he played a really good game. So, for Matanzas to walk away with a pretty handily win there, or to win pretty handily, says something about them.
I think this is going to be one of the more competitive games of the week. A little bit of a coin toss for me. I think both these teams are improved from a year ago, and it's going to be a real tough test for both of them.
Yeah, we haven't made our picks yet. I don't know who I'm picking in this one. So, Atlantic and Father Lopez. I'll take this one because I've seen Atlantic, and but Father Lopez is the bigger story coming into this one because they got their first win of the season last week, but it was also their first win since October 27th, 2023, when they blanked St. Francis Catholic 35-0. This time they blanked another team, Cedar Creek Christian, in even more dominant fashion, 49-0. So Mark Gabbard gets his first win as Green Wave head coach there. The Green Wave are on the board, and that offense through a couple of weeks looks like it could be something there. So that's super impressive just to see. And then Atlantic, they fell in overtime against Eustis, who they beat last year. So a little bit of a contrast there. They'll be looking to bounce back after a 12-6 loss. And I lost where I was. Merritt Island at DeLand. Zach, I'm turning to you since you saw DeLand last week. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, I mean, we ranked New Smyrna Beach last week as the 5th best team in the area, and then DeLand didn't punt the entire game. They won 56-21. The only drive they didn't score was ended at halftime because they started the drive with like a minute left, and they still got to the 6-yard line, and it came down to the final play. But I think we know what we're getting with DeLand. They just ran the ball, ran it. Marcellus Carey did most of the work last week. He had 118 rushing yards, led the team. He also led the team in receiving yards. He almost had 100 receiving yards as well, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then an interception as well. I think what I'm looking for this week from DeLand is maybe more communication defensively. For the most part, they stifled New Smyrna Beach. I mean, they couldn't get anything going on the ground. But there are a few times, actually every time New Smyrna Beach scored, for the most part, it was either like 3rd or 4th down, and there would be a miscommunication in the secondary, and Vance Murray scored 3 touchdowns that way. Every one of their touchdowns was on a blown coverage where there, as Rick Tarlington put it after the game, no one was in 20 yards of them. So I think if they clean those few little mistakes up, I'm really scared for whoever DeLand ends up playing because they can score the ball. You don't know where the ball is going. And if they were already playing well on defense, and if they just don't give up, a couple, miscommunications on the backside there, I think that could have been a shutout.
DeLand rushed for 286 yards at Merritt Island last year. They also had a pick 6 in that game. I mean, this rushing offense is just the real deal. We know what they're going to do, and we know how they're going to do it, but it's up to you to stop it. And so far, not many teams have done it under Darlington.
And I mean, we talk about Marcellus Carey and Tage Moore, but Ryan Joseph had over 100 yards last week. So it's really just who they want to give it to, it feels like. And then when they choose to pass, it's like you're already so focused on the run that they can just go over the top no matter what.
Well, it's not like they're playing a team of me, Zach, and Chris. We expect New Smyrna to win a pretty good amount of games this year too. So they had a week 1 bye, so last week was their season opener, but we had them ranked in our top 5 in the area. So a dominant win there from DeLand. Seabreeze at Halifax. Chris, I'll turn to you on this one because I know you've seen Seabreeze. Seabreeze comes into this one. I forget what they did last week. Halifax is bye week. That's why I was blanking there for a second. So they come in well rested, whereas Halifax comes in 0-3. They're still looking for their first points of the year. What are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a better offensive performance from Seabreeze. I know they really struggled against Spruce Creek, and a lot of teams are going to this year. I think we're going to get a lot more of a complete picture as to who they are. The player I think that really stood out to me though in that game was Matthew Wells, who plays tight end. Had a really nice grab in that game. In traffic was kind of the only real offensive highlight for the Sand Crabs during the day. And then defensively, they competed. They stopped Spruce Creek for 4 consecutive drives, which that is no mean feat as well. I mean, look at what they've been able to do offensively, like with the points they put up last week against Avon. I'm sure we'll touch on that in just a couple minutes, but I think all things considered, this is going to be a really tough assignment for Halifax, a game that they were competitive in last year with a more experienced roster. They just got to find a way to, kind of take their lumps here early and turn it around and get better as the season goes on. Because right now they've given up 105 unanswered points, including the Kickoff Classic.
You've talked about it, or you mentioned it. Let's turn to Spruce Creek. They scored that huge win over Avon out of Ohio, a state champion in 2024 last week. This week, the Hawks travel to Creekside, who's 0-2, but they've played good competition through 2 weeks. Zach, I'll turn to you on this one. What are you looking for out of Spruce Creek this week?
I just want to see them do it again. I think their win over Avon was Avon's first regular season loss since 2022, so that was no small feat. Cam Oxendine had 215 receiving yards, and PJ Miller had, I mean, most of them were to Cam Oxendine, but he was over 300 passing yards as well. Led the team in rushing. I guess I'm looking for their O-line to do more of the same like they did against Avon. That was a tall order from them. I mean, Avon had a 3-star defensive lineman, another FBS commit at linebacker, and they were bringing pressure at times, and it seemed like, all they could do was give PJ some time to scramble, find a guy in the run, which it is a success, and it worked for them. But I'd love to see how they perform against Creekside. And then Trell Edwards returned from injury in that game, I believe, and he was their starting running back. Obviously, that's a tough situation to return to, a team like that. So maybe establishing him more in the run game as well.
Chris, I know you have a note because it might not necessarily let up.
There's no let up for Creek's offensive line. They get one of the better interior defensive linemen in the state this week. Brian Harris, who's committed to Oklahoma, late decision to transfer from Mandarin to Creekside. So a very good player. Saw him at the Under Armour camp over the back in, I think, February it was. Really, really quick off the ball. Should give them a very good test inside. Of course, we've kind of raved about Creek's defensive tackle. So if you're up for watching some guys in the trenches, this is a game to go check out this week.
Let's go. A little trench warfare. University at Melbourne is the last one we'll talk about. Melbourne 1-1 so far. They beat Cocoa Beach to start the year, then lost to Merritt Island last week. University kind of the same thing. They scored a week 1 win over Sebastian River close. That was a 16-10 game. And then, as previously mentioned, they lost to Matanzas last week. I think the biggest thing for them is just, showing that they can win like in a pretty convincing fashion, right? Like you want to see them get off the mat and not have to go win kind of a nail biter like they did in the Kickoff Classic and then like they did in week 1. Christian Mayhew, like I said, showed some signs of explosion on offense. And their defense, I thought, played pretty well for the first half of that game against Matanzas, other than that initial coverage bust on a 65-yard touchdown in the first quarter. But if they can kind of string together some drives like that, it's just kind of the progress you want to see. Any other notes from you guys on that one? I don't think. I was gonna say I'm the only one who's seen University, I think, so far this year.
I think you handled it pretty well there. They, like I said, I think their first 2 games they were impressive. They showed resilience. I think they're in good shape to do so again.
No, absolutely. That's all I got, guys. Anything else we got to mention before we get out of here?
I don't think so.
See you on the golf
Taylor
course.
on bye this week. Yeah. They're the lone team not in action. But yeah, with four games between 2 local opponents, should be a fun week. So we'll be here next week to break it down. This has been Quick Slant from the Daytona Beach News Journal. I'm Chris Vanell. That's Zach Allen, Chris Boyle. We'll see you next time.